Kia ora, and welcome to National Flash Fiction's Festival Flash. This is the youth panel for 2022. For this discussion, we've got a load of young writers who've been doing some pretty cool stuff, who have all been writing for this competition that's running at the moment. They don't know how they're doing, so they should be anxious. I'm anxious. We'll have fun here. They're solid. I've read their works. They're talented. I like their stuff. So I hope we can enjoy a nice wee chat together. All right, so before we get too much into it, we're streaming on YouTube at the moment. So if any of you guys in the chat have got any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. Lola will flick them to me, and then I'll try introduce them into conversation. If you do that, you'll be entered into a big book draw. Also, if you go onto the Facebook page, not entirely sure of the details, you can get some details to get into that draw as well. Yeah, that's all I've got for the introduction, I think. Sorry, my notes are a mess. All right, so I'm Thomas. I'm an editor for Fingers, Commas, Toes. I've been doing a bit of writing, but I'm not the important one here. The crowd of people around me. So if I could get Atom to introduce yourself, please.
Hello, I'm Atom Gush. I'm 17 years old, and I'm from Wellington. And something that I've read that is recently that has inspired my writing is Hammers on Bone by Cassandra Core. Thank you.
Thank you, Atom. Hammers on Bone. Haven't heard of that one. Sounds interesting. Could we get yourself, Emma, to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Emma. I'm 16 years old and I live in Aroa, which is in Northland, New Zealand. My writing is inspired by all sorts of things, just kind of the world I live in around me. And I love reading Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams.
Big fan of Pratchett here. Nice. Sarah Kate, can I get you to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Sarah Kate Simons. I'm from Southbridge, which is a little town just outside of Christchurch, New Zealand. I'm 17 as of 17 days ago, ironically.
Nice.
And well, inspiration-wise, I'm mostly inspired by, I like watching people and little things that happen every day, and how little things that happen in the everyday can be have massive meanings behind them, and you don't even necessarily know about it until later. And reading wise, I don't know, I've read a lot, but Brandon Sanderson is probably my favorite author at the moment.
I haven't heard of Sanderson. I'll have to look him up.
He's really good.
So we've got Sophia here. Sophia is currently in Paris, so she might have to duck out early. But Sophia, would you mind telling us who you are?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sophia Hall. I'm 16 years old, and I currently live in Washington, D.C., but as Thomas said, I'm in Paris now, just for the night. I'm a poet. I'm a playwright. I love also writing memoir and flash fiction. I think some big influences are Ada Limon, Chen Chen, Leila Shati, just to name a few.
That's a good solid list, none of which I've heard of, I'm sorry. But no, thank you. I'm going to have to look up them. Chloe, can you please introduce yourself? Ooh. Hello, Chloe. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Kia ora. Sorry for the pause.
You're all good.
My name is Chloe. I'm Chloe. I'm 15 years old. I live in Christchurch, New Zealand, and I've been writing flash fiction since I was 12.
Very nice. So, okay, flash fiction is a relatively new medium for myself, but you've been writing since you're 12. How about the rest of you? Been writing for a while, or is it fairly fresh for yourselves? Is this your first foray?
Oh, I've been writing for a long time. I can't say any of the beginning pieces were spectacular, but I have been writing it for quite a wee while.
All right, so it's always been flash fiction?
Well, I write in quite a lot of different genres, but I do enjoy flash fiction quite a bit, yes.
Atom, Sophia, Emma, any sort of history with writing flash fiction?
I think
I've been writing for a while. I wrote flash fiction last year for the same competition. I didn't get anywhere. So I've been writing for a while, but never like got anywhere. This is my first time really doing anything with it.
I also, I think, started writing flash fiction sometime last year, so I'm quite new to it as well.
It seems like quite a challenging medium in terms of getting a lot of ideas in a story on a very short amount of space. So, hey, I like what you guys have been doing. So the reason I was asking about the stuff that's inspired you is because I was wondering what, I was wondering what you want your work to do to other people. So how do you think, what the lasting effects of your work would you want it to be? So Sophia, you were saying you were a painter and a writer. So what do you want your work, your paintings, or your writings to do to other people?
A lot of my work reflects on identity and my own identity, and I believe that the personal is powerful and that the personal is political. So what I want to do with my writing and my artwork is to encapsulate a feeling or a moment that is just so unique to me that hopefully it can resonate with other people and just create a feeling of like understanding and empathy and just global connection.
Which is a good motif, especially if you're all the way in Paris now and you're trying to link up the world. Some global connections. I like that.
Yeah.
Any other inspirations or things you're trying to create with your writings? Anyone?
When I write flash fiction started off as a very poetry driven, because flash fiction really does incorporate a lot of those poetic elements, and I was so into poetry. I loved it, and I still do. So flash fiction was really like that bridge, I guess, and it's one that I've stayed on. Like I just really love, like Sophia said, encapsulating that moment and that emotion, really making people reconsider things or maybe everyday moments in different ways.
For me initially.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry. For me initially, flash fiction was probably just about time, because I go to school and doing TA and all that. So you don't have a lot of time to write. So flash fiction, you can finish the whole story kind of and edit it and do all that in like just 1 week. And, you know, it's not a huge strain on your time. So it's kind of why I started writing short stories. And then I don't really know what I want to say with them. I just want to write them, I guess.
That's going to tie into the next question, but we'll finish this one now. Sarah Kate, what do you want your writing to do?
Well, I like flash because it's a moment, and it's such a tiny moment, you know, because you only have so many words. Like this competition is like 300 words. It's tiny, but the thing about flash fiction is that moment has to say so much. And it's true though, because some moments are like, you know, they last for a couple of seconds, but they're huge and they can change like absolutely everything. And I love encapsulating kind of like the feeling of the ordinary and how much, well, you know, like cool, like how big the ordinary can be sometimes, how much meaning can be behind something that you would look at every day and never even think about. If you look at it from a different perspective, there's often a whole lot of meaning behind that object or where it's placed, or, you know, and yeah, I like to sort of like make my readers like reflect on the world around them and things they take for granted and things that are everyday and how special they actually could be.
Which really ties into what you're talking about before. You were inspired by people watching.
Yes.
Which is, I like that. What about yourself, Atom?
Well, something that I do quite a lot in trying to do in my writing is to take ideas that other writers that I either like or don't like have done in their writing and sort of show take twists on that and show the flaws in the very widespread I suppose literary tropes and things like that, by showing how they can be done differently, I suppose.
I like that, putting your own spin on things. Oh, cool. So Emma, you talked about the editing process. So I'm curious about what your editing process is for flash fiction or for other medias or other mediums. How does that go? Does anyone have any unique things or process they like to undergo they'd like to share? Or where
I
do you
used to
start?
hate editing.
Oh yeah. Please.
Yeah, but I've actually started. I like it a lot now because when you start writing a story, you've just got this empty page, and that can be quite hard. When you come back to edit something, you've got something there, so it's just about turning it into something else. So the story I wrote for this competition, it started out as a completely different story that was a lot longer, and then I just cut it up and kind of destroyed it and turned it into something else. And I like doing that, I guess.
Did it end up
some
in
great advice.
sorry. Oh, please do.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Some great advice I've been given while editing flash fiction is take your ending line, because most, when you write something, you want to end it on a great or interesting note, with the perfect line. Sometimes inclination is, but you take that ending line and you erase it, because with flash fiction, you want to leave people with enough room to interpret what you meant without like tying everything up into a nice like little bow. So it's got to leave room for your audience, I think.
That's cheeky. I like that.
Yeah, that's the good thing about flash fiction. There's like an ambiguity to it. You can kind of say that's something, but not say enough for people to know what you're saying.
I heard a while ago it was taking the ending line and using that as your starting line sometimes, but just removing the end is quite nice. What about yourself? What about Sophia, Sarah Kate, or Atom? Do you have any editing processes that have helped or not helped? Anything?
My writing process is quite strange. I have an idea in my head that's just kind of been cooking for a while. And then I just know that I have to get it all on the page. And I just kind of free write, dump it on the page. And then I start nitpicking, pulling out bits and lines that I like, kind of like I'm writing poetry, but I make it very prosy. And then I just kind of let it flow together. I don't know. It's strange.
Well, I often find that I start writing if I have just one aspect, like perhaps a character or the ending of the story, and then build the rest of the story around that one aspect. So if I have come up with a character I like, I might go, okay, how can I make a story that shows this character's different aspects or whatever, and I sort of also can edit it, and if I'm writing it, then sort of might change and as I'm writing it, to include perhaps a focus on different aspects than the one I started. But I find that's how I start at first, at least.
I normally end up like editing as I write the story, which is like I'll get my lines down, and I often change ideas like midway through, and then I'll go back and redo the beginning or delete the beginning and stuff. I normally just go into like a frenzy for like the first beginning of the piece, and I just go over and I edit and I edit and I edit, and then I walk away and leave it. And I forget about it. And then normally like something I'll go, oh, I want to do something, I want to put this into competition, want to do something with it. And that's when I like come back and get like really technical with it. But often I've been coming back lately and going, oh, I actually did a really good job on this. Like the first time round when I was just aggressively editing it as I wrote it, and it actually doesn't need as much help anymore. I used to hate editing so much, but it's actually really cool.
Do you all edit alone, or do you have some friends or family that you read things to, and how does that work?
I always share my work with my mom, but I don't let her see it until I'm fully finished. I'm like, I don't want to give her something that's half cooked yet.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same.
Yeah,
I use
Emma, you've still got a green square, so you got to go.
I usually just edit all by myself basically, and I usually don't let people read stuff. I usually just send it away to like a competition so that the people reading it, I don't know them, so I don't have to like hear them say what they think.
That's fair. Chloe?
I am kind of enrolled in the School for Young Writers on and off, and that's been such a helpful medium because I don't really like to share work with people outside of that writing world, you know, like I have my friends, but I don't really share work with them or family. But having friends who really love writing like I do is really helpful, and they kind of get to see the process, I guess, and help me out sometimes. So that's really nice.
Nice.
Oh, I just wanted to quickly add on that
please, yeah.
I also have this writing workshop. It's in the States called Writopia Lab, and it meets weekly every Wednesday night. And it's just like teen writers, just like right now. And it's really nice because we have an hour period where we can just write whatever we want. And then for the rest of the workshop, we just share our writing and give like positive feedback or constructive feedback, which is really helpful.
A writing workshop can be a really helpful process, but they can be quite difficult to get started sometimes. Atom, you talked about you liked, for your inspiration, you like to do a bit of a twist on previous tropes and ideas, but you also start a lot of your writings with the character idea. So I'm wondering, is it always a character, or do you start with a picture? So a lot of the stuff I write is I write to a joke, or I write to try and describe a picture of myself. So do you always write for characters, or do you write for anything else, or write towards a character?
The two main ones that I find I do are either if I have an end point for the story or a character, but sometimes it's other things. Like sometimes it might just be one line. How can I make a story around this one line? But I find that characters are just so central to stories that it's easiest to start with a character, I find, at least.
So does everyone else sort of how do we all feel about that?
I kind of resonate with what you were saying about the ending of a story. Like for a long time, I used to know exactly how I wanted to end something, where I was working towards a goal of how I wanted it to look, and I had trouble with like the middle part. So that was really a main drive for me. But lately, it's become more about my experiences and looking for the ordinary but meaningful moments in those experiences, because not everyone thinks about how your life is so exciting and such great writing material necessarily, but when you do look for those moments that made you feel a certain way, you can kind of translate that onto a page for different people in different parts of the world or different circumstances, which is pretty interesting.
There's a thing I read about Pratchett a wee while ago. He was talking about his writing process, because you were talking about he was an author of yours, I think, Chloe.
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Emma. Yeah. Sorry, herding cats for myself in my mind. So Pratchett would start by designing a character, and then he would let them evolve into the narrative naturally. So he didn't have an endpoint. But I cannot fathom how the heck people can do that. So the idea of having an endpoint like Atom and Chloe are talking about, working towards something, is much more rational to me.
I usually have an endpoint in mind, but it's not always necessarily where I end up ending. Like it usually changes, definitely, when I'm doing the first draft or whatever. Like it never stays the same.
So if you've got a piece of writing that finishes in a different area than what it started with, how do you feel about that?
I don't usually mind. Like usually my stories, they go through like different stages. Like there'll be one story, by the time they're like a finished product, it's almost not the same story. I don't know, especially with the shorter stuff, because I just rewrite it so many times.
That's
So,
fair.
yeah.
How often do you all rewrite a tale or a story until you can get it right or correct for you? I know for myself, there's some stories, tales, and poems that I've rewritten sort of 10, 15 times, and it's just not come out right. And it's been quite frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I go through a lot of stages with writing it. So there'll be like an idea, which is maybe literally the story, but then sometimes it'll be the same thing when I write a poem, which is like a similar idea, and then do something else. And it's all around that same idea until I find kind of where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sophia?
I mean,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
sorry, with rewriting, it's not necessarily something I set out to do. So I don't like take a piece and then I'm going to completely like rewrite this, you know, as a better version of itself. I just do it piece by piece, I guess. And I found that writing or rewriting is something that is really hard to force for me. Like I have to be in a certain, I guess, state of mind or ready to translate what I'm thinking onto the page.
That's fair. Sophia, Atom, Sarah, Kate, any idea about rewriting or any comments about rewriting pieces that you've written in the past or that you're currently rewriting or currently writing? Sorry.
I think that it can be helpful to sometimes, if you feel stuck on a piece, to leave it behind and wait maybe a couple days, couple weeks, couple months. And then personally for me, if you're like scrolling through contest submissions and then I see something and I'm like, oh yeah, I have that piece that I wrote a little while back. Let's just workshop it a little and make it suitable. I feel like giving it time really helps, because if you're just sitting there staring at the same story you've been working on for so long, it can get really frustrating.
When I do generally or quite often rewrite things several times, but I find if I rewrite it several times and it still isn't working, I generally stop working on it just because I feel that it would be easier and more productive to just start something else at that point. But when I suppose when I'm rewriting, what I quite often do is change the perspective from say first person to third person or something like that, and I feel that that's quite because it can change a story quite a bit that way, but doesn't necessarily take that much effort to do, I suppose.
Sarah, Kate, any opinion on rewriting stuff? Should you leave it? Should you abandon them if they're not bearing fruit, or?
I'm normally, it takes a lot to get me to like abandon it. There are some pieces I've started and I normally get a feeling when I get like to a certain point and I just go, no, this isn't working and it's not going to work. And then I normally just leave it and do something else. But for the most part, if I've managed to get from beginning to end, the story is normally okay and I'm not going to like leave it because it's worked to some extent. So then as long as I've got like beginning, middle and end, I can do practically anything with it. There's always hope for it. So then I'll keep them. I've never really like rewritten a short piece in that I've completely left the first draft and just gone off it and rewritten the entire story in full. I normally just like, I'll go line by line and some lines get deleted. And then, so like my final draft will have bits from the first draft that are just exactly the same and I haven't changed because I get like too lazy to like retype the piece. So I just like delete sentences if I don't like them and then rewrite just that sentence so I don't have to delete the entire thing and rewrite it and stuff. So yeah.
You just said retyping in a draft. Do you all, so when I'm drafting stuff, I use paper and pen. Do you all draft typing now, or how does that work? And do you keep your drafts? You draft and typing?
Yep. I Yeah, it depends. Sometimes I keep my drafts and sometimes I don't. Yeah, I am kind of the mind, like if there's an idea that I end up cutting that I liked, I will keep the idea and I will paste that somewhere else in like a clippings thing. But I don't often keep the first draft if I've done the second draft.
Mhm.
I usually like write out by hand my first draft, like the initial idea, and then I'll type it up, and that's when I change a lot of it. Like as I'll read what I've written, and then I'll rewrite it like on a Google Doc, and then yeah.
I usually type using Google Docs and then I copy and paste on it for like different drafts. Sometimes I have a journal with me that I keep just if I don't feel like typing and would rather see it all laid out on the page first.
A journal can be a really interesting thing. I keep a couple myself, but I'm not as regular as I'd like to, unfortunately. It's all forgotten writing ideas or interesting words I come across.
Words can be really helpful when writing. I know for like poetry and even flash fiction, like having a word list of like just funny words or interesting words like wig or fish or architecture that you just have on hand that you can just use for a metaphor or just a description to spice it up and make it unique. That could be a fun tool to have.
I am tempted to go around finding some unique words from each of you, but we might save that for the end. So a lot of the stories of yours, or the works of yours that all of yours, should I say, that I've read from this competition, I don't know how you've done. I just know I've liked your work. They're all set in the past and deal with memories in some way or another. So is that the case with all of the work, or just the work you submit, or just for this competition, or how do you think the past plays in your inspiration of writing? And is the past a stronger theme or stronger idea than the present or the future? Or hey, why did you write it in the past tense?
I guess I take history, so I'm also really into history. So I
nice.
guess that plays a part too in my writing a bit. And a lot of my, like the story I submitted for this was about kind of memories, but it was also actually about the future too, because it had two tenses like going on, or two parts. So one was in the past and one was like a future. So it was kind of looking at how you can go from one thing to the other, and how maybe you wish you were back where you were, but you're kind of where you are now, and you've got to learn how to deal with that.
I feel like for me, writing in the past is quite an interesting, emotive kind of idea, I guess, because when people talk about the past, they feel certain things, maybe like regret, or, you know, wistful, like nostalgia kind of things. And those are kind of some interesting emotions to play with when writing. I think the past just kind of allows for a lot of different viewpoints and perspectives for characters.
I think that writing about the past is important, but it shouldn't discredit writing about the present or the future at all. Like all of those facets of time are very important in grounding the reader, grounding yourself in your story. Just helpful.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's another source of variety for how you write.
It's just sometimes when writing with a past tense, especially when in a tale where the stakes are high, you can kind of get an idea of how it finishes if you're still hearing about the story. Anyhow, let's try and find a new thing to talk about. Talk about crafting, talked about the nervousness of sharing with family and other bits and bobs. You know what? Let's go down the avenue of favorite or words that you've liked. Because, yeah, as I said, I keep a wee journal of words that I encounter in media, things I'm reading or whatever. A word that's inspired you. It could be a piece of a line or a word or a phrase, something that stood out as a bit weird or creative, interesting. So I think it was in a Jerome K. Jerome novel. He talked about a person with such a state of shock that he had the look as if a cat had been struck by a brick and was expecting another, which is such a horrible sentence. But it tells you exactly what's going on and it gives you the story. So is there any phrases or words in any media that you've encountered that have lodged in their mind that inspire you?
I really like the word petrichor. It means like the smell of rain. I just think it's really cool, especially because it comes from like, because ichor is like the blood of the gods in Greek mythology.
Oh yeah.
So somehow it's turned into the smell of rain, and I find that quite cool. I've always meant to write something about that, but I never really have.
That's lovely. I hope you don't mind if I write down your words here, because yeah, I'm going to steal as much as I can. I'm here to learn as well. Sophia, any words from or phrases or anything that stood out?
I think something that's it's kind of lame, but all I'm thinking of right now is like words that add on, like yet, still, and even and, like starting a sentence with and in order to just like jump into the story, just adding those little, I don't even know what they called, but they just dangle at the end of sentences and they add so much more to the story than if you didn't include them at all.
It's one of the great big no-nos, starting a sentence with and. Is what they always tell you, never do it, but ignore that rule because
all the rules.
There you go,
break
nice.
All the rules in writing.
Yeah, I like that. Just a subtle yet at the end, as you said.
Yeah, I think writing flash fiction is kind of leaving the rules of primary school behind for writing a little bit. Because they're so like encoded into you, you've got to have full stops in the right places and punctuation and capital letters and just the structure. And like when you break out of that, it's such a creative like gap, and it can kind of lead to some more interesting kind of creations.
So next year for your next submission, you're just going to submit one with no punctuation whatsoever.
Sounds like a plan.
I'd like to see that. Sophia's just had to dodge off. Thank you very much for coming around. So Sarah, Atom, any ideas of words or things that inspire you or rules that you want to break? Rules that you've broken and regret it, or rules that you want to implement? And again, these questions can go back to Emma and Chloe if you'd like.
See, now I often come across words that I really like, and now that somebody has asked me, what words do you like? I'm like, I don't know. And I often have this weird thing where it's not necessarily like the meaning of the word, I just like the way the word looks.
Frothy is an amazing word, but doesn't seem to do much for what I write. Yeah,
and for instance, I love the word asphyxiate. And it's a horrible word if you look at the meaning. But when I put it on the page, I just really like the way it looks.
That's what you need.
So I have lots of words, and like melancholia and nostalgia and stuff like that.
Melancholia?
I just really like the way the word looks on the page. It often doesn't have like the best meaning or like a meaning I like. I just like the shape of it or saying it or something.
Nice. Do you know what melancholia means by chance?
It's from melancholy. So
Oh, okay, yeah.
it's like the description of the feeling.
Ah, fancy. I've just been asked if I can tack on the question of how rhythm and sound works into writing. So Atom, you get first swing at rhythm, sound, interesting words, interesting phrases, or any influences that go into your work with regards to that.
I don't know. I don't, with something with rhythm, I suppose, is sentence length. Having having perhaps have a lot of short sentences in a row to create a sort of rhythm, but then also contrast that with longer sentences and things to create sort of as a very as a way of communicating. I suppose the immediacy of something or not. And regarding words that I like, I'm not sure. Again, I'm having difficulty thinking of them when asked, but one word that I quite like is apotheosis. I like both the meaning and the just how it sounds. It's quite an interesting word.
Good one.
And I do think it's interesting how a lot of the words we've come with are ones with Greek origin. I'm not sure if there's a reason for that, but it's interesting to notice.
Apotheosis is ascension to godhood or something along those lines. Yeah, it's a lovely word. The one that I've had on my mind since I've asked this question was curmudgeon, which is just a cantankerous old bugger. So you're talking about the sentence lines, sentence lengths, and how you like to shorten them down to get immediacy. How do you manage to plan that when you're writing? I know that's a difficult question, sorry.
I suppose it's more, I suppose, when I'm going back and editing it, I'll go,
okay,
this would benefit from being shorter or longer. It's a bit, yes. I might not necessarily do it when I'm first writing it.
So how about the rest of Emma, Sarah Kate, and Chloe? Do you do anything to build pace and rhythm or sound into your work?
Rhythm is probably something I've only started paying attention to recently.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I don't know how aware I was or I just didn't think about it. So I just try and muck around with like the length of sentences and try and go, well, I don't put an and here, or maybe put like a semicolon or something to make it a bit different or weird. Especially in flash fiction, I like cutting out the ands and the buts and just putting a semicolon because that gets rid of a word.
Cheeky, I like it.
Yeah.
Sarah Kate, I'm going to pray on you.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, sentence length and stuff is very much tied up with what atmosphere I'm trying to convey in the story. Like some stories have, like you're trying to go for like a wistful, dreamy feeling. You benefit from like longer sentences and more description and fancier words. Whereas if you're, like it's fast paced, things are going on, or, like everything's happening at once and it's crazy, then you go for smaller sentences. Sometimes you can put just like one word like on its own and just fragment the entire story. It's very interesting because it's both like a sound choice as for how you want it to sound, and it's a stylistic choice as to how you want it to look. So if you're writing something where the person's feeling fragmented and you've written it as fragments, like it's a reflection of how you've written the piece, which is really cool. And it's the same with like tense and stuff as well. Like present tense often feels better with shorter, quicker sentences because then you're very in the moment. Whereas past tense, it's a bit more sleepy. You have more room to like get into long descriptions, longer sentences because it's like a nostalgic feeling, which is interesting.
Yeah,
Nice.
the idea of stylistic choices in writing is just such a great thing to think about, because when you write it to say it out loud, or to read it and have that idea in your mind, or to say the words like for rhythm, similar sounding words with like the X and T's and stuff like that really contributes to how it's nice to say. But looking at it on the page is also can set a piece of writing apart. I think, like how you said about the fragments, is a really great addition.
All right, Chloe, thank you very much. You've just given me the time for the next question I've got. So when you're writing, do you write with the intention of your work being read or read aloud, or how do you want your work to be presented to the reader?
I personally love reading my work aloud, like not to anybody else, just to myself.
Yeah.
Because if I can read a piece of work aloud and get really excited about the way it sounds, or just how I put everything together, it's just such a magical experience. So I guess I don't really think about, when I'm really excited about a piece, I want people to see it, and I like reading it out to them. Like I like being the one to deliver that, I suppose, when I'm really proud of something. So I guess it's more intended to be read out loud, but I quite like, I don't really mind.
I'm probably the opposite. I prefer people to read it as words on paper. I don't really know. I think that's just because some of my stories, like, I'm trying to make it hard to understand. Well, not hard to understand, but I feel people might need to read them twice, or like you won't get it all from just having it read at you, especially with shorter things, because I try to be twisty or like surprise people or do something a bit weird.
Which can be quite a needed thing, especially if you're doing visual tricks or visual effects with your writings. Like
Yeah,
that.
definitely.
I think it depends a lot on what I'm writing. If it's a short piece or particularly poetry, then it's more something to be read aloud, I suppose. But if it's longer, it might be less focused on the language and the sound and more on the actual content, I suppose, which makes it more intended for just being read.
Yeah.
Nice.
But for the side of people reading your work, it is nice to have that, like, because you as the author kind of disappear. Like there is a kind of privacy for the reader of reading that and discovering that for themselves. Yeah, so it depends, I guess. Something to be said for both.
I like to write mine like as flexible as possible without too much of an intent. Like some stories I do very much intend to have a more visual or more read aloud vibe, but for the most part I like to try and write in a way that when it looks good on the page, so like it's good for the reader on the page the way it looks, and also you can hear it in your head. Like as you're reading the words, you can hear it in your head and it's got like a sound and a rhythm. So then if I was to take the piece and I was to read it out loud, it's not trapped by just being that it has to be on paper to have the full effect. You can still get an effect from reading it aloud and vice versa. It's just, I don't know, I just like it like that.
Nice. He talked about things being trapped on paper, and Emma, you're talking about how some of the writing can be it's different when it's read and seen on paper. So I'm wondering if this is something I'm not the best with, but in terms of newer displays, flash fiction is one of them, newer presentations of written media in different forms. Where do you guys see it going? Are we going to be so we've seen the flash poetry, which is a word on like a slideshow where it's just word, and it just builds up to the poem eventual like that. But where do you see writing going in the future?
I don't know, just the weirder the better, I think. Like the more people can experiment and just write in a way that hasn't been written before in a different form. It's exciting, and it can like make, because there's only so many stories you can tell, I guess, so it can make an old story into something new or different, or make someone see it in a different way.
Which goes back to the rewriting in a funny, strange way.
Yeah.
And also the more different mediums that writing gets into and stuff, the more accessible it becomes, because some people, you know, they don't necessarily like reading a book, but to like see like a slideshow of a poem or something like that might be something they really enjoy. And then they can also experience and enjoy the writing as much as someone who would prefer to read it in a book. So it just opens up a whole new like doorway for how you can reach people as well.
Yeah, and that reaching people is such an important thing, I think, for like creative writing, because I know so many people who, when I say writing, they think of English classes at school, you know, they're very formal, very structured, not very flexible. And I just think, you know, we all know that creative writing is so much more than that. You know, there's like so many rules to be broken, I guess, and so many boundaries to be pushed, that I think getting it out to more people will result in just such a great experience for those people.
Nice.
Well, I definitely think, particularly with the internet and things like that, is that there are a whole lot of new ways to write things, and yes, that does. I mean, writing can be both do the act of writing can be enjoyed by more people, and also reading those different these different medium forms can be experienced by more people who, as the others have said, might not want to read a book and can find perhaps there's like story podcasts or things, or the PowerPoint you mentioned, or websites and things that are able to tell a story in ways that are completely different than what have been done before, and it allows for a lot of innovation and different ideas to be expressed in a lot of different ways, which is I definitely think a positive change.
So you've all been writing for competitions and submitting your works out online and things, and we've got a changing world in terms of what people like to read, and as you said, making works available and things. How can competitions or journals and things make their publications more accessible for writers who want to make more innovative writing, or creators, shall we say? Would you like to see more open themes, more closed themes, different ways of submitting? How can we make things weird? I'm saying this because we've only got a few minutes left, and if we can give Lola and the rest of the team at Fingers, Commas, Toes, National Flash Fiction, any ideas for next year or whatever, you can guide the future.
I don't really know. I guess just, yeah.
And you know, guiding the future sounds like a very noble cause, so I'll try to jump in on it.
Please.
But are you talking about making writing better for the people who like already know about the competitions, or like a mix of getting competitions out to more people, or just like creating better guidelines? Like,
I don't really know, to be honest. I just want to know how can, very hard last question, I've been told. Oops.
Yeah.
I want to know what can competitions or publication do to make the experience more enjoyable and rewarding for you guys?
I personally like more closed themes. So I like, you know, there's things to be said for open themes, like write whatever you want. But I also like things that give writers an idea of what to write about, you know, like something that falls within this aspect. And I think that's when some really creative writing comes out because people take that and they twist it and they change it to what something you've never really thought of, you know, they can interpret it in all kinds of weird ways. Not like too specific, but you know, yeah.
It can be hard to get started with such an open-ended idea. But when they close it down, yeah.
I think themes definitely do help write, definitely.
Well, I definitely think there's a lot of competitions out there, and some of them are very specific, and some of them are very open-ended. So I suppose it's just have a variety of those will allow it to be more accessible. And one thing I particularly, or that I like about Fingers, Comma, Toes is that from what I've seen is that you accept both writing and also art and music and things like that, which I think is definitely something that I think more journals and things should be doing, because it does make it open to more people.
Yeah, I do art a lot and I write as well. So I think sometimes the art you do goes with the writing sometimes, like just sometimes if you're working around a certain theme or doing something, you can find made a lot of things that will go together somehow, even though they're all completely different.
Sarah Kate, any opinion about what you want the world of writing competitions to look like? Well, the future writing competitions?
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of mostly content with how they are now, because there is quite a lot open for youth, and there are quite a lot of, like, you can pick and choose what you want. Like if you want to go open, or if you want to go themes, if you want to do like a certain form like flash fiction or haiku instead of plain poetry, there's quite a lot of competitions that are now like open, and you can literally, like, if you know about them all, just like pick and choose. I don't know, maybe like it can sometimes, I suppose, if you're new getting into it, like finding competitions for what exactly you want to do can be a bit hard. So I don't know, but like I have a big list now, so it's not a problem. I can just pick and choose like what I want to do and how I want to do it. So I do like that it's very open like that, and I think just to keep going that way and keep opening like for more specialized things and the new mediums that are coming out. Because I've seen some things where people have done art and put their poetry inside the art and done a piece like that, and it's a poem and it is an artwork at the same time, and like competitions for that would be really cool. Like that's a whole new genre. So I think just that the competitions just keep evolving with the mediums and stuff, and it's great, you know, there's always something for everyone basically.
Well, thankfully we've got some people listening who are running competitions like these, or who will be starting them, so look forward to stuff in the future, hopefully. I've just got a couple of comments from the audience. They're learning a lot and they're liking this. They thank you all for your eloquent sharing about your writing experiences and things like that. So thank you all very much for sharing these. I'm saying this now because I think we're just about to run out of time. Sorry, I've just got to catch up with this. Apparently, I've got to remind you all, or I was supposed to tell you all that you've all been shortlisted. I hope that's good news. And if it's not news, then congratulations anyway. The awards night is tonight, so hopefully you guys will be on there. And hey, I like the work you've done. Congratulations and well done. I don't know how to close these things off, but no, thank you. I'm interested to see what some of your works are in the future, or all of your works are in the future. If you're still writing next year or later in the year, I'll be reading it again because I'm here. And unless someone tells me to wrap this up right now, I will open the floor for you guys to say anything you want to do. Oh, thank you, Atom, Emma, Sarah Kate, and Chloe. This has been great. Thank you, Fingers, Commas, Toes. And thank you to the audience for asking questions, for listening, and hopefully learning. Oh, and Sophia, thank you very much. I'm sorry you had to dive off. Have a safe train ride to Province tomorrow.